Meet Sylvia Ho, a lawyer who's got the legal info that business people need to know.
Welcome to my office, everyone. This video is all about cybersecurity. Everyone is doing business online, and small businesses are vulnerable to cybercrime. Individuals, employees, and customers are vulnerable to identity theft. It's a bigger problem than we know. And in Connecticut, Connecticut law has been revised constantly, and most recently to protect individuals against identity theft and other crimes. So in accordance with that, or in conjunction to that, businesses are required to protect this sensitive data. Connecticut has expanded its statute in 2019, 2020 to include information that is required to be protected by every business. Now, this personal information includes social security numbers, driver's license numbers, state identification numbers, account numbers, credit card and debit card account numbers, your passport number, your alien registration number, and a host of other information that needs to be protected, including military ID, and even the fact that someone had been a veteran and part of the military. It's a lot of information. In addition to banking regulations, we have a privacy law in Connecticut. So if there is a breach, Connecticut law requires you to tell your customers and to tell your employees about the breach. And also, did you know, to report it to the Attorney General's office. And you're to report it as soon as possible, as reasonably possible, or within 90 days, or you would be subject to penalty. That's a lot of information to swallow as a business owner. So today I am having a discussion with Stan Gryskiewicz of BC Development Group, an IT company, and Scott Prestileo of Burgess Insurance, a commercial broker. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, question, if there is a data breach, what happens if you're a business, Scott?
Well, so if there is a data breach and you are a business owner, like you said, Sylvia, you have a legal obligation to go through a number of different steps. You have to provide notification within the confines of the law. There's also a law where you have to provide credit monitoring services, 2 years of credit monitoring services to every single person who was affected. You could run into a third-party lawsuit. If there was a data breach and I'm your customer, my data was breached, and maybe I'm trying to buy a house, my credit is wrecked, and now I can't buy my dream house. I'm going to sue that business owner for mishandling my information. There's forensic costs. You might have to spend money to figure out, how did this breach happen? Where did it come from? How are we going to prevent it again in the future? There's regulatory fines and penalties. You might have an interruption of your business operations and you're losing income. And certainly in cases it could be a PR nightmare. Your reputation could be ruined from a data breach. So when there is a data breach, there's a number of different things that business owners could come into.
Thanks. One of the things that we need to do is to make sure that we have things in place. So I understand that there's a certain insurance that covers this type of loss for a business owner, not necessarily informing the consumer, or the employee, which you have to, you're required to do, but also you need to put out money to find out the extent of your breach, right? While you're telling them, while you're creating credit monitoring services to make sure that that identity theft does not hurt them further, and to tell the Attorney General's office, right? And there's insurance for that. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, a comprehensive cyber privacy liability policy will actually cover all of those things that I just talked about. It'll help you hire the forensic investigator. It'll help you notify your employees or your customers. It will defend you in third-party lawsuits. It will pay your statutory fines and penalties. So cyber liability or privacy liability insurance is absolutely available in the marketplace right now.
And is that part of it? It's not part of comprehensive general liability. We want to make that clear to our audience.
Correct. It's specifically excluded in the CGL, in the commercial general liability policy. A privacy or a data breach is specifically excluded. So you really need to go out to an individual insurance company, a Beasley, a Hiscox, a CFC, and get a really comprehensive policy from them.
So obviously in the underwriting of that, those insurance companies want to know what you're doing to protect your data so that you won't have to pay premiums that are through the roof, right? That's going to eat into your cash flow every year. So Stan, what are some things that business owners can do to protect that data in their computers from hacking or ransomware or some of these other kinds of crimes?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that businesses can do. What businesses need to remember is that there's no magic bullet that's going to protect you from every type of attack. So the key here is to have many or multiple layers of protection. So when we talk about layers of protection, for instance, one layer would be having a good router or firewall, to help protect your business. And that performs certain functions to help, to help for a lot of different things. Another layer would be to make sure that each individual computer has antivirus and anti-malware software. Many other layers. For instance, what we find in attacks nowadays is that 90% of all hacks start from an email, right? So having good spam protection is really important. And that's just another layer. And another layer would be the education of, educating customers. Hey, here's what to look for when you get an email that may be suspicious. So again, the name of the game these days is basically just having layers of protection.
Well, what kind of suspicious emails, is that known as phishing emails?
Yeah, there's many different terms, and you'll hear the terms phishing and spoof. So all those mean different things, but again, it's helpful. There's actually a few good tips out there that you could educate your users that if they get a particular email that does look funny, best bet is to not even open it. And again, if you have spam filtering protection, that's really going to filter out, 99% of the bad stuff. So these days, it's really, really important to have that protection. You get some of that protection through your mail service, but many times it's just not enough. That's not going to get everything. You need to have an additional layer on top of that to really block that stuff out.
Okay, and so I'd like to talk about, we've heard a lot about things like ransomware, right? With larger organizations, even previously during, we're filming this during the time of COVID, where we had one of our large school systems in the state of Connecticut not been able to open because all of their data, including data that's protected, by the way, young data regarding minors is protected under the law, under a federal law. So all of that data was taken away from the school system during a ransomware where they had to pay. What would a business owner do in the event that all of their information is hijacked, and how can they prevent it from happening?
Sure. So the layers of protection, again, is going to be a big help in preventing that from happening. But let's pretend that it does happen. Just so everybody understands, ransomware typically it's just a type of virus or malware that gets on your system. And what it does is it encrypts all of your information. So pictures, Word documents, PDF, Excel. Just imagine that all of your important information has been encrypted. And the only way to get it back is to pay the bad guys, right? For them to give you the encryption key to get to get your data back. So unfortunately, if you don't have a good backup system, then that's what you may have to do. So again, the main protector here, right, is going to be having a good backup system. If everything fails, if all the security measures fail, you got to have a good backup service in order to be able to restore those files. So if you do get ransomware, you'll just be able to delete all that and just restore everything from a backup. So you don't have to pay the hacker. Really, paying the hacker is you really don't want to do that. It's just people do it so often, and that's why they keep doing it, right? So the less we pay them, the more likely that this type of thing is going to stop.
So a lot of, I think one of the things that we didn't mention when that data breach happens to inform the customer or the employee and the Attorney General's office, but also local law enforcement as well. So in the case of ransomware, the FBI is going to get involved. Maybe the Postal Service because it's through the wires and internet. But if let's talk about the backup system. So many people upload their backup system into a cloud-based service, right? Is that something that's safe? Is it? How would you go about making sure that there's backup for, say, just for lack of a better, I'll give you a type of company and a manufacturer that has that runs all of its computers through systems so that they can operate their machinery. So now they have their employees' files, including that are digital. They have their customer account information. They might have invoices that are paid through direct deposit into banking and all of their payroll records. And then they have computers that are running through to make sure that the machinery is making, say, it's a parts manufacturer that makes everything to order. So all of that information, including the blueprints and everything, if there's a ransomware event, where would that happen and how would it happen, Stan?
Sure. So we're seeing a lot of information go to the cloud nowadays, right? A lot of businesses that we take care of them and they still have physical servers, but there are quite a few that don't. So they store all their information in the cloud, and all that means is it's just stored on a different server. All the information is stored on a different server, right? Not a server in-house. You'll hear terms like SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox. Those are all forms of cloud storage. And we find that a lot of times people mistake that for also a backup, right? All of these systems, they do keep different revision histories of those files, right? However, there is some ransomware out there that can, again, encrypt the information, but also, encrypt all those revisions, which is really, really bad. So I think people have a false sense of security a lot that, hey, it's in the cloud, I could always go back, this is a backup, but that's not always the case. So it's extremely important to you always want to have your information in more than one place. That's the key, right? So you have it, a backup service set to the cloud, which is important. And you should also have your data locally, so it's at your fingertips if you ever need it immediately.
So I think, Stan, you and I talked about backing up the virus to the cloud.
Right, exactly. So let's pretend you do get hit by ransomware, and you have an online backup, so to speak, right? Well, I mean, the next backup that you run, if the computer's infected, I mean, you are gonna infect your backup. The good news is a lot of good backup systems, right? They do have separate types of revisions, not the same as you would in a OneDrive type of thing, but it knows enough to isolate that type of information, right? So you would be able to go back. And that's why it's always not good to have, if you just have like an external hard drive to back up your data, right? All of the information on there can get encrypted. So again, you really need to plan with your IT service provider, the different forms of backups that you need so that you are protected 100%.
So, so that means that, so what would you do? And I guess the question is, who would pay for it? I mean, once say this manufacturer, this hypothetical manufacturer comes in, everything is encrypted. Now you cannot run your business. You need to be able to now let all get on the phone, because that's one way of letting your customer know that there has been a data breach, right? Get on the phone and call them and let them know that there's been a data breach. Now the hard work comes in as far as trying to get that backup system, right? So that you can get back in business, right? Because now everybody's twiddling their thumbs and they're basically freaking out. I would be freaking out if I were working for a company and all my data is out there. So what would you do, and who would pay for it? Sam, what would you do?
Right. So let's imagine again that all of our safeguards we put in place failed, right? And we could even pretend that they didn't have a good backup service, right? So everything's encrypted. Yeah, at this point, you better have a good cyber liability policy, because coming back from something like this and not having the proper insurance, I don't care how large or small the business is. I mean, it could certainly easily bring you under, for sure.
Yeah, it would be a very expensive thing to recover all of that information.
Absolutely. Yeah, could you imagine? I mean, if you're a manufacturing company, right, and you had 10 years worth of data, can you imagine losing all of that data? How, it's insurmountable to think to have to be able to come back from that. Again, that's what you have insurance for, right? I mean, that's going to help you. Certainly the process is not going to be, the process using Scott, obviously, he would do everything he can for you, but again, having the safeguards in place, having the insurance, you've got to have all that these days. It's just so important.
So Scott, what would happen? Suppose we know what would happen if you didn't have the cyber liability insurance. You'd have to pay out of pocket. You'd have to inform everyone. But what would happen if you did have the cyber liability insurance, and how would you go about getting that insurance to pay for Stan or some other IT provider's work to sort of de-encrypt the data or find the last backup that you could use to sort of get going again as a business?
Yeah, so I think one of the most overlooked things about a cyber liability policy is the fact that, when you sign a contract with these insurance companies, one of the things that you're getting is a data breach response team, right? You're not just getting the protection, the lawsuit protection. You report a claim to your insurance broker, the broker reports it to the carrier, and immediately a data breach response team is going to be contacting you. People who do this every single day and who know how to respond to these types of ransomware attacks. They know a lot of the times who the bad actors are. So, I mean, you're going to have a team of people behind you immediately to help to help get you through this. And that's really important because, as Stan will tell you, time is of the essence in these types of attacks. I mean, if you're not moving quickly, it's just going to get worse and worse.
So who's on a team like this?
Well, these are private companies that are hired by the insurance company to do all the forensic investigation, to figure out where the breach is coming from, to figure out, if you should pay the ransom or not. I mean, the insurance policies technically will pay the ransom, but like Stan said, you really do not want to pay the ransom when your data is held hostage like this. And a big reason for that, the Treasury Department just put out a notice a couple weeks ago and said that a lot of the times it's illegal to pay these ransoms because the bad actors often are terrorist organizations. And what happens when you pay money to a terrorist organization? It's not going to be good. You can get in a lot of trouble for that. So if you're trying to wade through this by yourself without either someone like Stan in your corner or a team of professionals that are hired by your insurance carrier, you're gonna go out of business. I mean, you're just not gonna make it. It's way too complicated. It's way too challenging these days.
Yeah, I remember that change in law. It makes you complicit. You're like a conspirator with a
Right.
terrorist by
I know.
it. Yeah, that it is kind of, ridiculous. So because you're trying to get your data back and then you're considered like accessory to a terrorist.
That's it.
It's kind of ironic. I mean, it is kind of ironic. Are these policies expensive? I can imagine that, on the one hand, the business owners like chewing their fingernails going, what if this happens? This could completely put me under, right? A number of businesses have gone under. Is there some statistic for that?
Businesses that don't make it. I mean, in the past, we've heard statistics such as 60% of businesses that suffer a significant data breach will go out of business within 6 months. So that is a statistic that is out there. It's not updated to 2020, but in 2016, that was probably true.
So would it put a business owner out of business to buy cyber insurance? I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, these policies, in my opinion, the amount of protection that they're providing, the policies are not very expensive. If I'm like you said, a manufacturing company, let's say I'm doing $1 million a year in gross sales, you're probably looking at $1,200 for a very comprehensive cyber liability policy. The premium is going to go up, obviously, as your gross sales go up. The more personally identifiable non-public information that you have, the premium will go up. If you're doing things that Stan is suggesting, like backing up your data, you have all the routers in place, then we can go to the insurance carriers and say, look what these guys are doing. These guys are protecting their information, and they'll provide a cheaper premium. But in general, I really think that the premium for cyber liability policies is very affordable for business owners these days.
It's really interesting as a licensed professional. So the law actually talks about the Department of Consumer Protection is one regulator, but other companies such as the Department of Insurance and in my case, the judicial system, these are all regulatory agencies or parts of government that oversee licensees. And it can be, in the case of lawyers, when law firms leave their data prone to being subject to ransomware or breach, that becomes a disciplinary a reason for discipline against the law firm and the individual lawyers. So that would be true of any kind of licensed types of professionals that have these sort of this data that could be subject their loss of license as well, right? Is that something that you've had kind of knowledge about, Scott?
Well, not firsthand, but certainly if there's gross negligence there in handling in the handling of professional personal information. If there's HIPAA violations there, I would see no reason why your license as a medical professional or an attorney would not be gained there, sort of in the fines you may pay.
Yeah, a lot of practices like physical therapists, any kind of medical provider, healthcare provider, hospitals have been, they took big whacks in the last few years, over millions of dollars of penalties for data breaches. And so I could expect that would be true all the way down the line to your small office practice with small businesses. So thank you very much, though. This has been a very good discussion, and I hope that we've informed the public about the importance of securing their data for the protection of their employees and their customers, and also in compliance with the law in I think a pretty reasonably inexpensive way to avoid this this big a possible disaster.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you.
Scott. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And for more information on Scott and Stan's business, it will be below in the comment area. And have a good day. Bye.
Do